All right, we are live on the Bible thumping Wingnut Google Hangout with Matt Slick. We're glad to have you guys with us, those who are watching. There is a link to be able to join this Hangout if you want in the comments section on the, YouTube video. So if you want to join, you're welcome to join. Tonight's topic is going to be on atheism versus Islam. Two different religious beliefs. Oh yes, I did say atheism is a religion, and if you want to argue against that, bring it up with the Supreme Court. They already ruled on that. And there, I gotta mute that. Supreme Court 2009 ruled that atheism is a religion, so you can bring it up with them. But fits all the definitions of religion. But the two religions that are very much anti-Christian. We've been dealing with a lot of things on atheism on these Hangouts. Matt has been doing a huge amount of study on Islam, and so we figured we'd bring those two areas together. So we are going to be talking with Matt Slick, and Matt, you're asking for which URL, and I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, I'm going to put up on the CARM site. I have the one for this room for participation, but what's the one for just watching?
Got it. I will give you that. So Matt, some quick questions for you while we're doing that. Matt is very well known for multitasking. So we know that we've seen a very hard reaction from the professing atheists against Christianity. I've noticed, and I know you noticed, that they don't seem to have that same hard line against Islam. For example, people baking cakes go into Christian bakeries and will sue them if they don't make a cake for a same-sex wedding. But have you heard of any of the, because we know that there was someone that went in with video camera to 13 Muslim-owned bakeries, and they were chased out. Have you heard of any lawsuits against the Muslim bakers?
No. You know, they're not going to sue people who will turn out and kill you. They prefer to attack people who are pacifists, like Christians.
So, I mean, what do you think? If you have, you know, what people want to call radical Islam or proper Islam, true Islam, and then you have, you know, these violent atheists. If Christianity, if they get their wish and Christianity was out of the picture, do you think that the atheist community would go after Islam next?
Oh, no. No, I think that they tried to get their rears handed to them, and I think the atheists are inconsistent and largely afraid to tackle the issue of Islam. What they want to do is get rid of the truth, because it's a spiritual battle that's going on. They don't want to get rid of that which is on their side, the demise of Christianity. So if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, the enemy that works inside of Islam and atheism, why would the enemy try and get people to get rid of Islam?
So have you noticed that, and I know you and I talked about this, that the Muslims who are very much against same-sex marriage have been kind of silent in this country in that whole debate on same-sex marriage. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on why that might be?
I think they want America to suffer the wrathful judgment of their God, and it's just for their demonstration of the degradation of what they call Christian America. So they're just watching America disintegrate from the inside. They're going to keep calm, keep quiet until the opportune moment arises, and then they'll try and flex their muscles.
Do you think that they look for the benefit, in what they would think of a benefit, as far as being able to the redefinition of marriage would open the door for polygamy?
Of course it opens the door for polygamy. That's one of the things the atheists and the liberals don't really want to ponder as a reality. But of course, when you redefine it away from the solid anchor of what it's been, now that anchor is dragging around, being pushed around by every wind of doctrine and liberalism, of course it's going to have that effect. There are going to be more and more people who are going to try and push for various redefinitions of marriage. We don't know how successful they will be. It all depends on how organized they get, because the homosexual community is organized, and that's why they accomplished what they did. If the pedophiles were to be organized as well, maybe they could get something done, or the polygamists, they could do it too. That's an idea. Maybe we Christians could get organized and actually fight the lies coming through, but that's a different idea.
Well, I think some of the polygamists are starting to get organized with their redefinition of polygamy. I'm trying to remember the title of it now. They call it age. It sounds like young age attraction.
Minor's attracted person.
That's it. Minor attraction person.
Yeah, that's another word for pedophile.
But you do know that there are pedophile groups, right?
What's that?
There are pedophile groups in America.
Yeah. In NAMBLA, I think it is.
NAMBLA, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, so what's your problem with... So are you comparing gays to pedophiles? Sorry, I'm getting that logic right.
So well, let me see where you're coming from first. You're a fake Christian. What are you?
No, I'm a Quaker.
You're a Quaker?
Yes.
Okay. Are you a pacifist?
Yes.
And you believe in the Trinity?
Yes.
And Jesus is God in flesh?
Yes.
Salvation by grace alone, through Christ alone?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, good question. How does that make one a fake Christian?
No, the reason I put that is because a lot of people say I'm not, so because of my views.
On what?
Well, a lot of things, like abortion, gay marriage.
Oh, you're for gay marriage and for abortion?
I'm pro-choice. My leanings are...
Wait. You're for destroying the human life in the mother's womb. For what reason?
I'm pro-life in my leanings. I'm pro-choice in my actions.
So you're a hypocrite?
No.
You say one thing, do another?
No. What it is,
how that works.
Right, I'll explain to you. Right, I looked into what happened when abortion was illegal, when abortions happened anyway, and what happened with the women. And I'm not just talking backyard abortions here. I'm talking, stuff like, for example, the chemical stuff people used to put inside themselves, and this was performed by people who were not chemists. This was performed by people who just wanted to make a quick buck. Now, would I rather be done by medical professionals who know what they're doing, or by Johnny Come-Lately's on the street? I know which one I choose.
Yeah, which is the best way to kill the baby? That's right. We should do it by professionals. That's right. The best way to kill the babies is by medical professionals. Yeah,
okay, you do
that's
know
what
the women who...
Yeah, the Nazis thought that
who were
too.
doing this are told of the risk, because it's a medical necessary procedure. So they're told of the risks.
We're not talking about the rare exceptions. We're not talking about the rare exceptions here. You're talking about hey, it's okay for the woman to kill the baby. It's inconvenient. You want a professional to do it.
Have abortions?
I'm sorry?
Do you know why people have abortions?
Yeah, all kinds of reasons. But it's okay to just destroy that baby, right?
According to Planned Parenthood,
the situation.
It seems that it's close to 90% of the people that have abortions out of convenience.
Mm-hmm. So, phony Christian, you're for just the issue of convenience killing the babies, aren't you?
No.
What?
No, I'm for a woman's right to choose and be informed.
No. So you are for the right of the woman to kill the baby as long as you're not doing it.
No, I'm for her right to choose if she's informed.
Her right to choose to do what? To kill another life that hasn't done anything wrong?
But it's not a baby, it's a fetus.
Oh, it's not alive.
No, it isn't alive.
It's not alive?
Living, not alive.
So it's dead?
No, it's living, but it's
not
it is
alive. Okay, so it's alive. What nature does it have?
There's a difference between living and alive.
There's a difference between living and being alive?
Yes.
And what's that difference?
Sentience.
So my cat is alive or not alive?
Your cat's alive, but is it living? Does it have
So my
sentience?
cat is not
Feels-
living? So my cat's not living?
No, your cat is living because it
Smiling?
has sentience.
So when a man is in a car accident, he's in a coma, and there's no sentience going on. It's basically brain dead, they think. So he's not living, is he?
But it is living
Is he
because
living or not
it has
living?
sentience.
Oh, so sentience is what makes someone living?
Yes.
And where'd you get this?
Well, this is what the scientists say is what makes a zygote not a human being yet. It's a potential
Ah,
human being.
okay. So let me look up the definition of living. Having life, being alive, not dead, in actual existence or use, extent, active or thriving, vigorous, strong. So having life, being alive. So you're not living if you're not sentient, but you're alive. You're just not living, right?
Yes.
Okay, could you do me a favor? Do this. Go like this with your hand.
Do what? Sorry, that.
Put your hand like that. Okay.
Okay.
Now look to your left. Now slap yourself upside the head.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but again,
I mean, what do you do with that? Use living but not alive, even though living means you have life. So they redefine living and life depending on sentience. Why? I'll tell you why. So they can justify killing the baby. Let me
it's
ask
not
you
a
some
baby.
questions. Let me ask you some
It's not a
questions.
baby.
Let me ask you some
It's
questions
a
here.
clump of cells.
Does life start at conception?
Pardon?
Does
Does,
life
does,
start at conception?
in scientific terms, no.
Okay, so is the sperm alive? Is the egg alive?
No. They're just cells that have replicated that can replicate.
What
But
country do you live in?
I will ask you a question.
Wait. What country do you live
Are
in?
you against all abortions?
All right, what country do you live in?
The UK.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're not driving on the same roads together.
Okay. So, so
Because you can't
is
think.
okay. So are you against all abortions?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you against all abortions?
I can't say that I am because I don't know all instances of every
Okay.
abortion.
Okay. Let me give you one. If, for example, a woman has a fetus die in her womb while she's carrying, you do know that when she has that baby removed, that's referred to as an abortion, right?
The only thing
Only
I
thing
think
I think
might be acceptable,
might be acceptable for abortion
is if it is
is
absolutely 100% guaranteed that the baby growing in the womb of the mother will kill both.
Well, in the case that you gave, the child in the womb is already dead, so it's not murder.
okay, but that's still an abortion, though.
So
Yeah, but it's
the
not
issue
aborting
with
a life.
abortion that Matt's bringing up is murder.
Yeah. Now, you're for killing the baby. Let me ask you, so is that her body? Is the baby, is it her body?
Yes, it's her body.
So she has 2 heads, 4 arms, and 4 legs?
No, the baby's inside her. It's gestated. It doesn't even have those yet. But it's
Oh,
removed because
so
you do know
at
that
what point does it become human?
its head and all that stuff. That's later on.
At what
Later
point does a baby become human?
But most people say about 23, 22 weeks.
Okay, so that's when it becomes human. So its nature changes to human.
It becomes a human being, yes.
Okay, so a human being has a certain nature. So what is it? What nature is it before it's human?
It's a zygote. It's a bunch of cells.
So is a dog zygote the same nature as a human zygote?
A what? A frog?
Dog.
A
Bow
dog.
wow.
A dog.
Is a
No.
dog zygote the same nature as a human zygote?
I don't think the dog replication system and the human replication system are comparable.
Okay, are they the same?
No,
The
I don't
natures
believe
are
so.
not the same. So they have different nature. But if they're not human and obviously not dog, then how could they not be the same nature if you don't know what they are?
What do you mean? I mean, like they're potential humans. They're not human beings yet.
Potential. Well, I didn't ask what the potential was. I asked what they are, not what
They're
they
potential
could
human
become.
beings.
So then would you say that we can take a 10-week-old human zygote and put it in the womb of a dog? Would that be okay with you? It's not humans for you. Is that okay?
Would that be okay with me? Again,
Would it be okay with you?
it depends. If
On what?
it's healthy for the baby and it can survive, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So, yeah, wow. No wonder the UK's in trouble. Look,
Again,
I see why they call you a fake Christian, because you really don't hold the Word of God in high regard.
I do.
You're inconsistent. No, you
I
don't.
do hold it
Because the
in
Bible says that men are supposed to protect the weak and
Yes, I
protect
do.
the
I do
innocent. But you don't want to do that. What you want to do
No,
is
I do.
this. You want to wet your finger, hold it up in the air, and see which way the political wind is blowing. And
No.
you're going to go that way. And you're going to follow. You're not a leader. You're a follower. And what you follow are the morals of the world. You want the woman, the mother, to kill the child in her.
No.
Yes, you do. You
No.
want her to have that choice.
No.
You don't want her to have the choice.
Well,
You just
no.
said you did.
Okay, you straw man my position. Right? I'll explain to you what it is. In my leanings, I'm pro-life. Okay. What that means is that I want to teach certain things that will eliminate the need for abortion, and those things are better sex education and freedom of conception tools, that stuff like abortion in the morning, after pill, all that sort of stuff.
You're like a socialist liberal.
Yes, I am a socialist.
Yeah.
So was Jesus, by the way.
No, Jesus. Look, don't be pulling Jesus into socialism.
Anyway, then the other thing we need to do is make the foster care system and the adopting agencies better. Because then the women will no longer be having abortions; they'll be put into it. Because the reason that they put up abortion is that that's a better option than putting them into the crappy adoption agencies and foster homes that we have at the moment. If we actually
okay, you have a question for me. Why don't you just ask me your question? Because you're not making any sense. Seriously.
I'm not. I am making sense. I tried to explain to you that
you can't deal with the issue of the human life at formation of the egg coming together with the sperm. You don't deal with the issue of the ontology. You don't know when it becomes human. You have a general idea. You're inconsistent. You want one thing, but you want the mothers to have a different thing than what is morally right. You don't know what you're doing. You're not logical. You haven't thought these things through. Plus, you're a socialist. You mistakenly think Jesus was a socialist. You don't know what you're doing. I see why people call you a fake Christian. I don't know if you are or not, but that's just it.
Jesus, what are you?
Gary, hold on. Gary, here's some things. First off, you're arguing, Matt's trying to argue for what type of nature is in the womb. Okay, if you do a DNA test, you're going to find a human being. You're incorrect in what you're saying as far as the children in the womb. By 10 weeks after conception, they have arms, they have legs, they have a head, they have a heartbeat. Okay, so you're arguing for a result. What the real question, and this is what Matt's trying to get to with you, is what does God say when life begins? Science doesn't define it. God does. Does God say life starts at conception? Yes or no?
Life continues at conception, just so you guys know. The heart begins to develop at 18 to 25 days. The 4th to 5th week, the vertebra begins to develop. Blood flow begins. Eye development begins. Arm and leg movement begins. The umbilical cord begins to form. By the 6th week, fingers and toes are there. Nose and ears, joints are developing. All essential organs are developing by the 7th week. Now, let's kill that baby up to the time of birth. You know what we can do is just deliver that baby except leave the head inside. So technically, scientifically, the baby's not really born yet. Then you take an instrument, you shove it to the skull of that baby while it's out of its mother's vaginal canal, but its head's still in there. And the baby just shakes in pain. And then you take that
It doesn't
baby and
feel
you
pain
sell the
yet.
parts. Yeah, phony
You do,
beetle
you do know
maniac.
that baby doesn't feel pain until 22, 23 weeks, right? It
We're
doesn't.
done. We're done.
It isn't developed.
Yeah, we're done. Sorry, I'm not. We're not going to be, say that a baby like that doesn't have any feelings, doesn't feel anything.
Okay.
You've never seen an abortion on film. You've never seen, and the babies in the womb, they feel the pain, and you can see because they move to get away from what's happening to them.
Matt, you want to move on to
Yeah.
another person that has a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So does anyone else have some questions? I know I do notice so many people that on the YouTube channel seem to have lots and lots of questions and make lots and lots of statements, but I don't see them willing to come in here and do that. I would challenge those of you who are on YouTube that want to say that Matt and I are lying about things, come on in, have a discussion. Try to use your real name. That might be interesting, but actually that'd be a question, Matt. Why do you think so many of these guys won't use their real name?
I think they're afraid. They don't want to risk anything. You'll use your real name. I'll use my real name. And look, I'm looking at some of the things. At least one guy, Brandon Henry. That's good. He gives his name Nico ISD, and just pejorative idiocy. And then another Nick. Rappaport is blathering, etc. Matt looks very slick. I mean, come on. This is the thing, is that people's self-deception, which is evidenced by their behavior, their childishness, their immaturity, their lack of ability to be cogent, to stick with the argument, to deal with the issues. This is really bad. These people vote. They probably sit, mouth open, watching the liberal news, believing whatever is told to them. They go to the movies, believe whatever is told to them. They just love to watch the crap shows on TV and just believe whatever is talked to them. And then when it comes to the issue of absolute truth and righteousness, then they complain and they whine and they try and stamp out the light of Christ and the Christians who want to stand for him. Their judgment's coming. Not that I want that, but their judgment is coming. And they need to repent and come to faith in Jesus Christ. Now, the fact that they don't want to come in here and deal with us hopefully on an intellectual level with the issues just demonstrates to me that they don't know what they're doing. And upside down cross boy, Wolf, I won't have any conversations with him.
What up, Split? Do I still offend you?
You can just get rid of him because we've had this out before. His
He's
thing
gone.
is offensive. I find it very offensive. And what he'll do now is he'll go and he'll talk smack and talk stuff about me and how evil and stupid I am and afraid and all that kind of stuff. It's just that I find his what he chooses to appear as, I find it quite offensive. And that's the way it is. So he doesn't have to like it, and he can go whine and cry like a baby someplace else. He doesn't like it. Matt, my challenge still stands. I will debate you on topic, will Matt look better with the beard? Now, that's up to my wife. She's the final arbiter on that one. I do have a weak chin, so I'm always a little self-conscious and think a beard might balance my face out a little bit. So I think so.
You could always have a goatee, Sam
I tried
Shamin
it.
style.
Yeah, Sam style. I'll be seeing him in a week and a half. But yeah, I've thought about the goatee, but my wife, more goatee equals less smooching. There you go.
So we know where your priorities are.
Yeah, that's right. The smooching definitely is up on the priority list.
So when
Okay,
I
so
went
does anyone
on
here
carm.org,
have a question for Matt?
It says atheism versus Islam. So do we have any Muslims around here?
What are you?
You don't remember me, Matt, now do you?
No, I talk to a lot of people, and it's just
I'm an apologist on Pal Talk, Christian apologist.
Oh, yeah, I remember you now. Yeah, because I tuned in to how you said Muslim, and Muslims usually say it that way, or people raised over there, the way you pronounce it. So I was curious. So, yeah. So anybody going to ask any question? There's Cliff
I've got a
Jumper.
question.
Okay, Cliff Jumper.
Yeah, I'd like to know why you're faking Asperger's. I think you're faking it.
Okay.
I
Why do you say that?
Okay, I listened to you talking to J.D. Kane, and if the way you described it is you've never created a coping strategy ever, which is
I'm sorry, I
completely...
couldn't understand you. What? What?
If the way you described your Asperger's, you went to your therapist and had 2 sessions, and the things that you said you had issue with you've never had created a coping strategy in your life, which I think is impossible for someone of your years. I have Asperger's. I actually have been tested. Have you been tested?
I don't know what the testing would be. The psychologist ran me through a bunch of questions for a couple of hours in 2 different sessions.
Okay,
And,
is he qualified to diagnose Asperger's?
He was a clinical psychologist, I guess, yeah.
Okay. You see, here is mine. This is me when I went to the Sheffield Asperger's Centre.
Okay.
Okay,
good for you.
And I got them from 2 clinical psychologists.
So you really messed up.
Thoroughly. I had 14-page assessment. I was tested in person by 2 people who dropped clues and cues. Many of the symptoms that you came out with are completely not Aspie, such as you are arrogant and offensive and deliberately go out of your way to offend people. Now, Aspies don't do that. When they offend people, they do it by accident.
Cliff, you're offending me. I think you're doing it on purpose. And
let me work with him. Let me work with him. Let me work with him. This is I'm enjoying this.
Weeks ago on your show, Cliff, you talked down to me. Remember? The 27th.
Sorry, no, what? Sorry, your accent.
Sorry, we spoke on the phone on your radio show on the 27th. You talked down to me. I was telling you the thing about why it's wrong to kill babies, but you wanted to add the extra bit on it. Do you remember now?
No.
Let's see. I mentioned Fiona Robertson, the Christian lady who was on this show, and then
remember something about somebody mentioning.
Yeah. And you meant to be offensive.
Remember something
That's
about.
not an Aspie trait. Yeah. Do you remember now?
A little bit, barely.
Yeah, well, like I say, you haven't got Asperger's. I'm quite sure of it. I mean, let me put it another way.
Can I ask you a question?
There are 3 options here. Well, one moment before you do. There are 3 options here. Option number 1 is you're faking. I'm going to go from worst to nicest, okay? Option number 2 is you went seeking something, and that you went through a checklist, and at the end, because the word you said is, okay, do I have Asperger's? And he went, oh yeah. Now, he could have said, maybe, possibly, we should get you tested, and you've just jumped to the conclusion and basically done an end run around it and said, oh, I've got it. And number 3 is you've been diagnosed by someone who doesn't know, is just a normal therapist, a normal psychologist, and does not have the expertise to diagnose Asperger's specifically.
Okay.
So you were going to ask me a question.
Okay, so why are you so uppity about this?
Well, you say, you know when you get those people who are claiming Social Security for being hurt or something like that, they get whiplash or something, or they're claiming, like their back has been hurt or something like that, and they're walking around in a Zimmer frame, but then at the weekend...
Can you give me a short answer?
Yeah, I think you're faking it to gain a support so that you can excuse yourself. You can use it as a scapegoat, shall we say, to excuse yourself of being an arsehole.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying that I knowingly, purposely am faking it.
Well, it's the only thing that...
Wait. I ask you one question, you go on for 10 minutes. So you're saying that I'm purposely, knowingly faking it?
I believe so, given
so the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Okay,
so you're saying I'm deliberately lying and deceiving people?
Yes.
Okay. And on what basis do you say that? I'm willingly, purposely trying to lie?
A combination of, well, I think it's because you preach all this, oh, I'm a nice guy, I'm a Christian, I don't tell lies, which you do, and it can be demonstrated. In fact, it was demonstrated when you spoke to Fiona. I didn't mean to be offensive. Yes, you did. So when you say things like that, you are absolutely lying. Not
Wait a
only
minute,
you,
wait a minute, wait a minute.
you're lying to
Wait a
yourself.
minute. Hey, hold on. So, do you know what projection is?
Yes, I know what projection is.
Okay.
Yes.
You know what projection is. Okay. Do you know what ESP is?
Yes, I know what ESP
Okay.
is.
Which one do you think you're guilty of?
I'm not guilty of any of them.
Well, wait.
You see,
My turn,
hang on,
Mr. Aspie.
Observation.
Mr. Aspie, practice social skills. Practice social norms.
I just muted him, so
Okay.
I practiced it for him.
Yeah, you need to practice your social skill set here. Want me to help you out? Give you some pointers? Would you like some pointers?
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things you need to do, because I know that we Asperger's people, we often don't get the social cues that come from people. But what I've done is studied it heavily for a long time. Now, you don't have ESP. You don't know what my motives are. And I'll tell you, you're wrong. You assert I have certain motives, but you don't know me from anything. You haven't been around me except to see me sitting in this chair. That's all you've seen.
Wrong.
You don't know, for example, you don't know that when I walk into a room and there's people there, I quickly count, quickly assess, see who's sitting where, see what positions that they're in, seeing which guys might be a physical threat, see which guys might be an intellectual threat, see which women are the kind of women that might be annoying or problematic. Then I very quickly, in the next 5 to 10 minutes, assess what kind of problems or issues I might have with any one of them. Then I have to go through my checklist of the things that I have to go through and say, I can't talk about this with that person or this with that person because it might be offensive. You know why I know? Because my wife and my friends have told me about certain things like that. You know something? When I'm driving down the road and I see a flock of birds, I have to count how many there are. I even notice the pattern that they are. I have to watch people to see what they're going to do. I study their body language. I study it. When I go into a room, I'm very, very confident that I can match people, I can watch with them, and I can deal with them very well. You want to know why? Because I'm smart. Now, you could call that arrogance if you want, but you want to know? I'm not done yet. And I use my sense of humor to help control the situation so that I know that I'm in the right place with them. And if I can do that, I'll do that. And you want to know another reason why I know as much as I do about stuff? Because I find that in the insecurity of not being able to deal with people, I find that if I know stuff beyond what they know, they'll come to me for an answer, and therefore that's another way of coping. That's just some of the stuff.
Right.
Is that
okay.
Asperger's?
So,
No.
Is that Asperger's?
So,
Not,
right.
And by the way, I don't like being touched. I don't like when people come up behind me. I don't like when they touch me.
Awesome. Excellent. Absolute fact. That's a prime example where you don't have Asperger's. Being touched is a physiological issue, not a neurological issue.
Okay, and we'll get. Wait, Mr. Psychologist, dude. Hold on. You've accused me of all kinds of stuff. You've accused me. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
I get overloaded with too many sounds and too many things, and I have eyesight problems when lights are behind me, when people are certain places and stuff. I don't like people touching me. I don't want them to touch me because I get overloaded with too much stimulation. I don't like that kind of stuff.
And yet, I've watched you on videos talk to the public, shaking people's hands. You don't flinch. You look at people in the eye.
Why do you think I do that?
Eye contact with them, sticking a microphone in the face.
I don't make eye contact with them. I'm looking at your mouth. That's all I'm looking at with you. Why do you think I'll shake hands with them? Because it's okay to shake hands. Not being liked to be touched doesn't mean I won't be touched. I go to martial arts. I deal with that. I've overcome it.
Yes. The difficulty is that you say you feel pain. That's what you said. You feel pain when people touch you.
Sometimes.
Matt, Cliff, guys.
Yeah, we're done.
This is not a topic about you or Matt or anything that.
No, the reason I want to do this a little bit is because the atheists are now trying to say I don't. Maybe I don't. All I'm telling you is a psychologist I saw said so. That's all I'm saying. And that's it. He said so. Well, what do you want me to do? That's it. He goes, yeah, you do. You definitely do.
Well,
he's the guy who quizzed me for 2 hours.
Here's the thing that you end up seeing.
Whatever.
Is that this is an attempt by people like Cliff, and this isn't the first time we had it. We had another guy that accused you of lying on this very issue. You have guys that are making a claim that the irony is they're not approaching it with a degree to be able to make the assessment. They're making the claim because either they have Asperger's or their child has Asperger's, and they're saying they know you, Matt, better than you or the doctor or anyone else, having never met you. So what you have there is they want to plead for science as their god, shall we say, but the reality is that what are they doing? They have a confirmed bias. They start with the conclusion that you're lying, as the last guy, not Cliff, but the guy a couple weeks ago. He started with the conclusion that you're lying, and the way he knew that you did not have Asperger's is because you lie. And if someone with Asperger's can't tell a lie.
That's stupid.
I apologize, but unfortunately J.D. Kane was going off largely what I was saying to him. And he didn't quite get the message through correctly. And I'm now addressing that.
Okay, Cliff,
now,
what's
there is something
degree,
important to remember.
What's your degree of
You're
what
just so wrong.
did
You
you
just say
do
I'm doing
on Matt?
lying. It's stupid.
There's an important thing that's worth pointing out here.
No, Matt, Cliff, you've been asked. You were asked several questions. You've yet to answer directly. So answer directly.
Okay, which question would you like?
What is your degree and what was your examination that you did on Matt to clinically prove that he does not have Asperger's?
I haven't clinically proven anything. I am giving a statement based upon. I've made a statement based upon what I have observed.
And your observation is in
this
a
chair.
few scenarios.
No, not just in the chair. Watching several videos, giving speeches, you meeting the public, watching your channel, watching all sorts of things about you. I probably went through about, I don't know, a few dozen hours looking.
Good. Did you learn anything?
Looking at your eye contact, looking at your body language.
I don't
Not
look at
only
people
that,
in the
and
eyes, buddy.
do you know what the biggest signature for me is? That you obfuscate words. You sort of say,
Can you be more clear on that?
Okay, fair enough. When you were talking to Skyler, I can't remember what the word you were looking for, but it was basically, what's your definition of that? And he said, well, let's go to the dictionary. No, I want to know what your definition of that is. Now, an Aspie would be saying, okay, let's have a look at the definition and see if that comports with what you're talking about. That would be an Asperger's way of looking at it.
So all Aspies do things with words like that?
You will twist meanings to make them fit to what you want them to think.
You're an atheist, aren't you?
What's that got to do with anything? That's
You're a double A,
to
aren't you?
this conversation.
You're a double A.
A double A? What does that mean? That makes me sound like a battery.
Yeah, you're an Aspie atheist. You got two things going against you.
So what? It doesn't make any difference. If you were an atheist, I would grill you in the same way. It doesn't matter. Please don't pull the Christian persecution thing. It doesn't matter to me. If you want to believe that kind of stuff, go ahead.
I'm not persecuting you. You're persecuting me.
No, I said don't pull the Christian persecution thing.
Oh, so you tell me what I can and can't do now.
Stuff. It doesn't matter.
So Cliff, you without any kind of clinical background, without having an actual examination, can know better than the medical doctors that Matt was examined by. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's a little bit worrying because if
it's a yes or no.
The qualifications I have, then they're useless. Then.
So you're saying you know better than the medical doctors, based on never actually examining them.
Yes, but here's the problem, you see. I don't believe he actually had a medical examination.
Can you answer the question?
Tested. I asked the question. He said he saw his therapist.
No, I didn't see a therapist, a psychologist.
Sorry. Psychologist. Yeah.
So
I saw two psychiatrists.
Now, the third time I'm going to ask you, are you going to answer my question?
I do not have a degree, and I'm not a psychologist. There you go.
So you are in a position where you can't say he doesn't have it.
I am making an assessment based upon I have Asperger's. I know what Asperger's is. I do not see the symptoms that are consistent.
Do you judge all Aspies by your standard?
No.
So do you know the full scope of standard of Asperger's?
Okay. Do you remember I was saying about obfuscating words?
I'm not obfuscating anything. I'm being clear.
Okay.
Do you
No,
know all ranges of Asperger's that people can have? That's a clarification to see what your knowledge base is. Do you know?
That's not really the point. The
Yes,
idea
it is
is
the point,
that you
because I'm
have
trying to establish your
Asperger's.
credibility.
Asperger's has a range. Some people have it more than others. Some people have
We're
it less
wasting
than
our
others.
time here. This guy is just accusing me. It's the atheist tactics now. They can't beat the arguments, attack the individual. That's all
Christian
they're doing.
persecution has nothing to do with that. Come on, man.
Cliff,
Stop
Can't
lying
handle
to
you've
the
already
yourself.
proven,
Back
Cliff.
to verse.
A
Is ad
classic
hominem.
example of argumentum ad hominem.
Yeah, Cliff, this is the
Yeah.
simple reality. You've
It's-
admitted. Yeah, he left. He left on his own, just so that no one thinks that we booted him. He left on his own because this is exactly what we keep seeing week after week.
It's getting worse.
Yeah, it's just make an attack when you can't defend it, then run away. I mean, we see this in the comments feed right now. Everyone that's so bold, probably in their mother's basement, with not being willing to use their real names, and soon as you point out the hypocrisy of their argument, they run away. And he's saying, Matt, that you're going to claim to be persecuted, but what is he doing? He's going to run away, and chances are we'll go see his YouTube channel. He'll say that he was being attacked by you. And the reality is, the fact, let's deal with facts. He's not in a position to be able to make the claim that you don't have Asperger's.
Right.
And for anyone who's watching, I can attest to some of the things Matt said. I've seen him both in public and private. I've seen him where there are places where okay, for some of us, I admit it is fun to watch. You put him in a restaurant with lots of people talking, loud noise, and you see him just getting edgy. He can't handle it.
If you have Matt in a restaurant, you don't need cameras.
Yeah. I mean, when these people make these conclusions, oh boy, Matt, I'm almost tempted to. I have a phone call coming in. Our buddy Ed Romaine. I'm tempted to pick it up.
Hey, Ed, put him on. Have him call in.
Ed,
Ed's great.
Say hello, Ed.
Hey, brother, what's up with you?
You're on a Google Hangout with Matt Slick right now.
Wait.
Right now.
I'm doing what now?
You're on a Google Hangout with Matt Slick right now.
Oh, hey, man. What's up, buddy?
Hey, man. How you doing, buddy?
He's saying, how do you doing, buddy? Because let me pull the speakers out. You can hear him. There you go.
Okay.
So,
hey, Cam, now?
So Ed can hear you now, Ed.
Okay, cool. Hey, all I wanted to do was just ask you if you are still a team leader at the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, that we could talk about after. You have any questions for Matt?
No, not really. I had no idea this was happening.
Yeah, I know you're calling during. If you ever call Matt during his radio show, what he does is he just answers the phone and lets you listen to the show for a couple minutes, then he hangs up on you. So we figured we'd do that and let you talk to Matt.
I told me to run out of time.
Sure, yeah.
So you've gone out evangelizing with Matt down with the Mormons, right?
Right, that's correct.
So now when you go evangelizing, you're standing up on a box, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm actually stuck in a wheelchair.
That's right.
I'm pretty loud, so I'm louder than most people that are standing up on the box, so it balances itself out pretty well.
Yeah, that's one of the things that for folks who don't know Ed, he has CP, he's in a wheelchair, and he is one of the boldest guys I know in a wheelchair with just sharing the gospel with folks. It's a great testimony. So.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. How many people are listening to you all right now?
Right now, we got 63 viewers listening to.
Oh my goodness! Well,
see, so you got to be careful when you call.
Yeah, Andrew and Matt are two of the best guys I know. So you guys are stupid if you don't listen to these guys. And I really mean that. These guys are wonderful brothers.
We've just now had to bring into question your judgment, with that statement alone.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
All right. Hey, I'll give you a call later on about the other, but and you could watch on YouTube right now if you want. It's up on my wall.
Yeah. What should I type in to look for?
All right. So anyone else have? So I'm gonna hang up, Ed. Talk to you later. So anyone else have some questions for Matt? Well, we got
Meow's cat does.
Meow's cat does.
All right, go for it,
Yeah,
Meow's
so,
cat.
Vincent. Yeah. Well, first off, Matt, I do want to commend you for being so. I mean, I don't know how I would actually feel if someone was accusing me of going against what Scripture says, lying, on multiple levels. So I do want to say that I appreciate you being as calm as you were against someone who is accusing you of not having Asperger's again. And kind of as a side note, I'm kind of curious, and this isn't really my question, but I'm kind of curious because I personally have dyslexia, and there are varying forms of dyslexia. So if someone came up to me and said I have dyslexia, and they had really bad reading comprehension, I have dyslexia, but I have good reading comprehension. So it's different flavors, as it were, I guess, of dyslexia. I'm kind of curious, just so maybe some people hearing might have a better idea of the different flavors, I suppose, of Asperger's. What I guess would you be able to just do like maybe a brief thing saying okay, they might have this and not this?
What it is, this is weird. I'm going to start studying it up again. But what it is generally, it's an autism spectrum thing. Now, I most probably absolutely have autism. I'm hypersensitive to pain. I used to have super acute vision, hypersensitive to touch, things like that. And I get overloaded in varying environments, but there's, at any rate. And so when someone started saying, the reason we got clued in on it is because of some friends we had in San Diego. A woman worked with special needs kids, and we were four of us, she and her husband, and my wife and I were going to a play together on Coronado Island, and she mentioned some of her kids with this thing called Asperger's, and we just were laughing. Because Asperger's, are you kidding? I mean, come on, what kind of a name is that? And so we're all laughing about it, but we figured it out later that what she was doing was broaching the topic because she'd seen it in me. And so I asked her, well, what is that? And she started listing things, and we're laughing. And seriously, what happened was both my wife and I stopped laughing, and the lady kept talking, and my wife pointed at me, and I'm pointing at myself. And I said, oh my goodness, you think I've got that? And she says, yeah. She said, I've been watching you now for a while, and you seem to have it. And she said, I think you need to get tested. Go see somebody. And I said, well, I don't want to. It really disturbed me at first because it means I'm mental or something, and then, of course, it doesn't. But it was a tough one. And so I did a little bit of research on it and discovered that there are quite a variation of people who can have it. On the far end of the scale, there could be Asperger's people who will constantly rock, who, when you get close to them, they don't do very well. They get nervous, they get untrustworthy. I mean, they become suspicious. If you reach out to touch them, they withdraw. They'll react. Just talking about the extremes, they'll react, just not well in social situations and start doing things that aren't quite normal. And people will pick up on it, and then they get ostracized. And so she was telling me about this, which is exactly what used to happen when I was in high school. Exactly. I mean, those are exact symptoms. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so that's on that scale. It was not all of those, but it was some of those, some of those things. On the light end, there can be people who have Asperger's tendencies who can do pretty well socially, but they have to work at it. They have to work at being good socially. That's what I have to do. And now, for me, it's pretty much natural in that I can walk into a room and I assess pretty quickly. So I know that, John, you were at the conference out there in Ohio, right? John Brady? He wasn't he, Andrew?
No, I don't think John ever
No, he
made it to
wasn't?
NorCal Fire, but he should.
I thought he did, but anyway, okay, sorry.
Like in 3 weeks, John.
But anyway, I was going to say, because he may have seen it, but what I've done over the years is studied. And to be honest, and I mean, I remember as a teenager having no clue how people had conversations, not understanding what they would say, what they would do. I would try and risk going in and having a conversation with people, and they would just look at me like I was an idiot. And I learned not to talk to people for a while. I learned to watch and study. So I got in for, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, this mode of studying people. And I haven't told too many people this, but since we're on this kind of topic and it's coming up, I have told people this before. My mom and dad would have people come over for whatever, just their adult friends. I would purposely stay and listen to them talk for a couple of hours, studying the verbs, studying the nouns, what kind of things they would talk about, how the conversation flowed from one thing to another. That's what always fascinated me. How do you do that? How do you bring something else up? How does a conversation start with an A and end up with on the letter M? I was always fascinated by that. And so I'd study that. And I got into the idea of being able to map out conversation styles. And so I started practicing it on people. Well, I wasn't doing really well, but I found out that I was smart enough to use humor. And then when I used humor, that's what I used to cover for my inadequacy then. Well, here's what I'm going to say, is that I started getting good at it. It took me about 4 years. I started getting good at it, and then what I started to do was go to nightclubs to meet ladies, because I like ladies. And what I purposely did for 3 months is watch people and never did anything. I would go to this one place and watch people. I would study them, just study. It's all I did. And became a white boy with rhythm and had a lot of friends. And that's what broke through, was doing that in that environment. And so I haven't masked everything. But the reason I'm allowing myself to go through this, which sounds all narcissistic, is because I think what's going to happen is more of the atheists are going to try this technique of attacking me on my Asperger's. And maybe I don't have it. I'm just telling you this psychologist said I do. That's all I'm telling you people. That's what he said. Okay, whatever. If some atheists want to pay for me, hey, I'll get tested. I'll give them the results. I don't care.
Well, I think one of the things, Matt, that we have to realize is the fact that you have these struggles and have learned how to overcome them where maybe others haven't doesn't mean you don't have Asperger's. It means they have not put the time and effort in as much to learn to deal with it and overcome it. I mean, as you and I know some different things we have with each other. I mean, I remember in school, I had a great difficulty learning to concentrate on one conversation at a time. If there was other things going on, actually in college, we had someone was curious because they knew that I could hold like 5 conversations and pay attention to each of them. I just multitasked. It became really frustrating because I couldn't pay attention on one thing. My mind was always constantly distracted. But I learned, as I know you do, note-taking. It forces you to concentrate on one thing. I know you take lots of notes, even when you're here in a hangout. You're taking notes on what people are saying, and that is a coping mechanism.
You should see my Pal Talk notes. It's like 40 pages.
So
Yeah, it's actually this is actually getting into something that I did want to also comment on with myself, and I'm sure with people who have Asperger's, is that with dyslexia, when I was growing up, I learned well, actually, technically, I had to learn how I learn, then learn how other
Yeah,
people learn, so that when the book was trying to teach the other people, I had to translate it through how they were supposed to learn into how I was supposed to learn. So you learn coping mechanisms, but it never really goes completely away. Like, I still have dyslexia. I can read much better than I could before I got training, or before I trained myself even. But that doesn't mean that, oh, now I just don't have dyslexia. So it's
right.
I definitely understand what you're saying there, Matt. And I do have other questions, but I'm
Okay,
going
so
to
Just,
wait for
you
other
know,
people, though.
you're
well,
going to.
I know Vlad. I sold Vlad that he would get next question. He wanted to ask a question on Islam, so let's give him a
Just do
shot.
it.
All right. So Vlad, if you or Vladimir, I should properly say, sorry, you want to unmute yourself and then ask your question. You have to actually unmute yourself. Okay, well, he posted it earlier. He's saying he'll repost it. Let me ask the question he had. He said, Muslims pray 5 times a day, and
That's
the
all.
second pillar of their faith, you can, I'll mispronounce it, but the Sharia prayer, Shalah prayer now is what he looks like. If you are on some island in the Pacific Ocean, how in the world are you praying towards Kabbalah? Strange, Earth is round. So I'm not sure if that question is clear enough, Matt. I guess the
Well,
question is they're supposed to pray.
what I understand is they do the best they can, and they're in a situation they don't know what direction to pray. They just do the best that they can, and then they trust. And that's it.
But before they started praying toward Kabbalah, where do you know where they used to pray toward?
Well, actually, they prayed towards Mecca. They used to pray towards Jerusalem, and then when the Jews didn't accept Muhammad's plea to unite with him, then he turned his back on Jerusalem, so to speak, and then started praying towards Mecca. That's it.
So I mean, you've been doing a lot of study on Islam recently, and so with that, I know you have gotten together with David Wood and done some videos together.
Yeah, they're about ready to be released.
And you guys have been looking into things like the textual criticism of the Quran.
Yeah, not as much as I want to, and that's something I really want to get into. Not many people know this, but a Quran fell to the floor in Yemen about 15 years ago, give or take a few years. German archaeologists were in this old mosque working, and there's a shelf around the top, and a Quran just fell. And when they compared it, it was hundreds of years old. They compared it to the modern one. It was different.
Okay, so
And the Yemenese government confiscated it. You know, stuff like that.
So let's back up for. I mean, many people probably aren't as familiar with Islam and why that's so important. So, what is it in Islam that has this belief that would what makes that such an important discovery, and why is that such?
Because in Islam, what happened is Muhammad, he got his revelations from Gabriel, who has 600 wings. Angel Gabriel has 600 wings in the darkness of a cave. I think it's interesting in darkness, but nevertheless, it's called the recitation. So he was told what it meant, what the Quran was supposed to be, the recitation of the book that's in heaven. The perfect Quran, the perfect book is in heaven. So he was given this by the angel Gabriel, and then Abraham then recited it and gave it out to people. They wrote it down. So the collection of these sayings, these surahs, the ayat, put together are those things that are supposed to be the representation of the perfect book in heaven from Allah. Well, the thing is, in Islam, if one thing in the Quran is really wrong, then you can't trust the Quran. And it's not true from God, and therefore Islam would be false. That's how seriously important it is.
What's also very problematic is that with the New Testament we have a rich manuscript tradition. With the Quran, however, the third Caliph, Uthman, burned all of the contradicting versions. and left only one with 114 surahs. So how can you know that he got it right?
And you know, Vladimir, that's an important point that people don't often realize, is that in Islam they believe that God wrote the Bible through Moses, then men corrupted it, through David, then men corrupted it, through Jesus, then men corrupted it. But they say that with Muhammad it never got corrupted. What Matt's giving is proof that there were other versions, and the importance of it is, and really you mentioned it, and this is the thing to bring up with Muslims. If the third caliph gave an edict to burn the abhorrent texts, that means there were other texts.
That's right.
Just simple logic. How do you know
And
he
also,
burned the right one?
they have quite a lot of problems with saying that it is corrupt. For example, Surah 18, verse 27 says no one can corrupt the words of Allah, no one can change them. How Surah 10, verse 94 says Muhammad should go to the people of the scripture if something is unclear to him.
If you're in doubt, go to the people of the book.
44 through 47 says we should judge by the gospel and by the Torah. So they have huge problem in trying to say that the gospel and the Torah are corrupt. Not just the historical problem, but the problem in their book itself.
All right, well, plus there's scientific inaccuracies. I like to ask the Muslims, where does a man's seed come from? And they'll say, well, of course it comes from the testicles. Well, the Quran, I think it's 84 verses 5 through 7 says, let man but think from which he is formed. He's formed from a drop emitted, proceeding from between the backbone and the ribs. Well, that's the chest.
The best response I've gotten so far is, well, it will be proven in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard them say, well, incidentally, I say we call those chesticles, incidentally, and they're going to chuckle out of that. But what they've said is the best response I've heard is that the testes of the male drop later in the fetal development when the fetus is in the lower abdominal area in the birth area of the woman, and that's what it means. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because it says he's created from a drop, and if you think about what that word drop means, and we're talking about ejaculation, a drop is a smaller segment of liquid from a larger segment of liquid. A drop. We know what he's talking about. He's talking about the sex act. And so he's talking about that. It's not talking about any fetal development, anything like that. So what Muhammad was saying is that a man's seed forms in his chest. That's obviously incorrect. We've also got issues of the crucifixion. He said, he wrote in the Quran about the crucifixion before it was even invented. Chronologically, he said Pharaoh would have people crucified. Crucifixion wasn't invented until roughly 600 BC by the Phoenicians, and Rome borrowed it. And
not only that, but in Surah 4, 157, it denies the historical fact of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, which is one of the basic points of attacks of atheists upon Islam. Imagine atheists would attack Islam on the basis of Surah 4, 157. So
that's right.
It just shows how...
I'm going to be in a debate in a week and a half with Shadid Lewis in the Seattle area, and I'm working on my opening statement. We're going to have two debates. One of them is, the first one is why I chose to accept or reject Islam, and the second one is why I chose to accept or reject Christianity. Well, on the issue of rejecting Islam, one of the reasons is, well, quite simply, if the Quran is true, then Islam is false. It's really simple. Because the Quran says in Surah 18:27 and 634 that none can change or alter the words of Allah. Well, the gospel was given to Jesus. It was given to Jesus in Surah 57:27. And just like you said, you know, about Surah 5:47-48, it talks there about the Muslims are to tell they're going to look to the Christians for interpretations about things that they themselves might be in doubt. Why would Allah, through the Prophet Muhammad, say go to the Christians and see what the Christians are saying if the Bible's been corrupted?
And not only that,
Doesn't make
Matt,
sense.
but the ones who argued that the Bible was lost in the time of Muhammad, it's simply
ridiculous.
refuted by such verses. So
Well,
it's
yeah,
very
that's easy to
potent against
put
their
to
position.
sleep. Absolutely easy. You know, I'll get my Greek New Testament, which has textual apparatus in it, and it has documents from before 600. Greek manuscripts of the New Testament proves this idea that it wasn't the case. And I got to memorize where that surah is, but it says to confirm what came before it, and that the Quran is there to confirm what came before it. And
I think it's in Surah 3, though. Don't quote me on that.
I'm trying to look right now. I'll figure it out. Yeah, I have a bunch of cards.
That quote in my book.
Yeah, here it is. It's 548. To thee, the people of the gospel, we sent the scriptures in truth, confirming the scripture that came before it and guarding it in safety. What? Confirming what came before. Well, where does the Quran confirm what came before? It does.
A parallel verse in 3, but
it contradicts. So if it's confirming what came before is the gospel that was given by Allah to Jesus in Surah 57:27, and that the Quran confirms the gospel in 548, but yet the gospels contradict the Quran. And if the Quran's true, Islam's false.
And the cat's meow bringing up a good point in the chat. He says if the Bible was corrupted by the time of Muhammad got his revelation, why does the Quran say to go to the people of the book? And if you don't understand his teaching,
exactly my
go
argument.
to those people because they'll guide you. And in I think it's Surah 4 or 5, where it actually speaks of the prophets who did not believe, that speaking of the New Testament, and says God's word cannot be changed. And so, was it corrupted or was it not? They have a problem.
Well, it's the Islamic dilemma, because if it is, the Quran is false. If it isn't, the Quran is false. Either way, we win.
Well, yeah, and one of the things I always point out.
Music in the background.
Ask a Muslim, what is the Christian definition of the Trinity? And I ask that for this reason.
5:1:16.
Exactly. See, when they come to the definition of Trinity, if I get someone that does not know Christianity at all, wasn't born in this country, get someone that was born in a Muslim country, they will say the Christian Trinity is the Father, the Mother, and the Son.
Right.
Because in Surah 5 it says, speaking of, have Allah supposedly speaking to Jesus, have I ever told your mother worship her as God? So no Christian believes that Mary is God. I mean, the Roman Catholics may venerate her and lift her up, but
yeah,
they
that argument
say she's God.
for Muslims, because it says that they are 3 separate gods. Allah and Jesus, we certainly don't believe that the Father and the Son are separate gods. So again, completely excluding Mary, their entire argument falls to represent our belief. So,
well, they're not supposed to speak with a lie. Surah 22:30. One of the things I'll do with the Muslims when they start saying I'm a polytheist, I'll say, so please tell me what a polytheist is. Oh, you believe in many gods. No, I don't. Yes, you do. And I find that to be really interesting, because I'll say, well, I know what I believe, and I do not affirm the existence of more than one God. Only one God exists. No, you believe in many gods. And it's really kind of interesting to have a conversation with someone who knows your own mind better than you yourself do. And how do you win a conversation with somebody, win an argument?
Did you have that discussion earlier today, Matt, with someone?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Someone was telling me what my motives were. That's right. I wonder if there's I was gonna say that guy's a double A. I wonder what a triple A would have been.
But yeah, I mean we see that a lot, though, don't we? We see people that are completely unaware that that's what they're doing. They're making an assertion of what you believe,
right,
and claiming they know it better than you, what your motives and thoughts are.
Yeah, it's always funny. But back to the Islam thing.
So,
one of the things I love to do with what's that?
For what AAA would be.
I'm sorry?
Cat's Meow put something in chat what the AAA would be.
You got it. That's right. That's right.
And if those of you who aren't watching, who aren't in the group, you're just not going to know. You got to join to be in it,
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. So you guys were, okay. So I liked, well, anyway, okay. So we'll get back in to the issue.
Meow.
But one of the things I like to do with, and I'm going to be doing this in my opening statement, is it's really simple. Now, get this. I got to tell you this little setup here first. You know, Sam Shimon. I mean, the guy's incredible. I mean, he literally has forgot in 1 week more than what I've learned on Islam. The guy is just phenomenal, right?
Yep.
So, oh, he is. And
Learned
David
everything
Wood,
I
he
know
knows a
from
lot
him.
of stuff. Yeah. So Sam, I go to debate Shadid in Atlanta, and the guy from California, he's running the whole thing. He's out there too, the pastor, and George. So Sam is there, George is there. George speaks Arabic, right? And we got other Islam experts sitting there, and they said, Matt, we want you to speak and teach us something about Islam. I'm like, are you kidding me? I couldn't teach you guys anything about Islam. What are you talking about? And but I did come up with something, and that they said they liked. So I'm going to kind of share that with you guys. And this is the best I got. Okay, everything else I'm learning, I'm getting from the guys who really know. Except, I will say, I was reading through the Quran. The Quran, I was reading through it. You know what? I'm going to do this sometime. If I have about a month where I don't have to do anything else, yeah, fun to get Matt distracted. Hey, look at that. Okay, is to sit there with the Quran and go through and read every verse and comment, make notes about certain things, because I was doing that a couple of months ago just to test some stuff out. There is so much you could say about the Quran and the stupidity in it. There's so many things that are just right there in the text. They're just, it's really bad. There's a ton of stuff, new stuff to be discovered. But at any rate, nevertheless, one of the things, Matt, if you need help, Arabic search in Paltalk for Jail Harbor, a great apologist, just tell that Vlad sent you.
While Matt's reading that, if there's anyone that's in the Hangout that does not have a question on atheism or Islam, if you guys don't mind dropping out, there's some people who are wanting to get into the Hangout. And so if you don't have a question, if you don't mind watching on YouTube, there is a question, Matt, relevant to this that I do want to bring up from YouTube. It says, I want to know where Matt's story of the Quran falling through the floor when a mosque was being investigated, forgot the exact term, and that it was subsequently hidden by the Yemenites because it did not align with the modern Quran. So do you know where you get that information from, I guess, is the question being asked.
I don't remember. I read it on, I just read it.
I think David Wood is where I thought I had, David Wood actually on your, in some of your interviews that the videos you did with him, I think was...
no, I read this on, when I read it on, it was like a major news thing that they had found something. And that's what I remember. So it was a few years ago.
That Nabil and David did a video on, Ibn Masud versus Ibn Ka'b on 111 or 116 chapters of the Quran. But I'm not really sure. I think I've read the same thing that Matt read, but I can't really give the source because I don't remember.
Well, I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, and it says this Sana'a manuscript was found along with many other Quranic and non-Quranic fragments in Yemen in 1972. But I don't think that's the right one.
So one of the other things that is brought up, and this might be a good one to make a distinction for those that don't understand textual criticism, Matt. Someone is saying here on YouTube, there are scientific inaccuracies in the Quran.
Yes, there are.
There's scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, so what? Another comment that was sent to me was, and this one wasn't public, but what is the difference between variances within the Quran versus variances within the Bible?
There's, I don't believe there's any scientific inaccuracies in the Bible at all. And I'd just challenge anybody to find them and produce them. But as far as the Quran, there's a problem in the Quran in that Islam itself says the Quran is perfect in the Arabic. It is perfect. That it is the infallible, perfect, every letter, every dot, everything is perfect, and that the Quran that they have is perfect, and so that if there's one thing wrong in it, then the entire Quran can't be trusted. This is their view. That's not the view in Christianity. In Christianity, we recognize that the original writings were the inspired documents, and what we have are copies of the original writings. We have something like 99.5 to 99.7% textual purity in the New Testament documents. There are variants that occur. The variants don't dissuade the Christian from believing in the Bible, because there's enough repetition and redundancy and stuff in the Bible that we don't have to worry about anything.
They
It's not that the Bible
actually
is not trustworthy.
show that the Bible is in a way preserved, because we don't just have one line of manuscripts and who knows who wrote those. We have it being copied over and over and over and over again into thousands of manuscripts, and therefore we can reliably say that what we have today is actually
It's a Bible,
very,
yeah.
very close, more than 99% close to what the writers of the New Testament actually wrote. So,
And the fact is that it's not the position of the Bible, the Christian church, that the Bible and every single letter is inspired, and in the extent, for example, Greek manuscripts that we have. What we say is, no, the originals were. We have copies of the originals, and the copies aren't perfect. They're all pretty much perfect, but they're not. They're like 99.5 to 99.8, is the best I've heard, percent textually pure and identical. That's it. And so there's no problem in Christianity with that. And so, but the Quran, that's not the same. And the Quran does have scientific inaccuracies in it.
and that guy that posed the question, he said, well, Quran has scientific inaccuracies, Bible has also. That reminded
Where?
me
Show
of
me one in the
something.
Bible. Show me one in the
Yeah,
Bible.
exactly. But that
Show me one.
reminded me of something. Almost 50% of Muslim apologetics consists of Tokukwe fallacies. Well, you know, Quran has a problem. Oh, sure, Bible has one too. Well, that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to address the problem in the Quran, not actually attack the Bible and not address the point I just made. So,
yeah, if you go to, for example, if you go here, here's one of the things that the Muslims will say. They'll say, "Oh, the Quran is inspired because it has scientific things. How could they have known that a man's seed formed in his chest?" You know, whatever, or whatever they might say. Well, if that's the case, that the Quran is true because it has scientific accuracies, then the Bible is true because it has scientific accuracies.
Yeah, one of the things, I was doing a debate at Montclair State University with an imam, and one of the questions that came up in the Q&A was, they gave a whole bunch of questions and said, this is in the Quran and it's scientific long before the science knew it. How can you explain it any other way? And it was interesting because each one of the ones they gave were arguments that we saw in the book of Job, and I was like, if that's going to be your argument, then where did Muhammad get it? From a book that was much older, written by God, the Bible, the book of Job, one of the oldest.
Right.
For those who are listening or watching, because some listen on podcast, Matt posted a link that is on CARM, and you can look it up. It's at carm.org, carm.org/scientific-accuracies-in-the-Bible. So it's scientific accuracies in the Bible. You can go to carm.org to look that up. That's a link that Matt posted for folks.
You know, this guy says there's no the flood is biblical flood is an example of something that's not scientifically accurate, and I asked him how so, and he said there would be evidence for it, yet there is none.
The Grand Canyon, even secular people. I saw a program on Discovery. They've come to start to realize that the Grand Canyon, they felt that was formed by a flood. They just think it was a local flood
over millions of years.
Yeah. Well, no, there's actually they think that the canyon was carved in millions of years, but they argue that there was evidence because of the way the sedimentary rock is, that they think that there was a flood that initially.
I'm not a geologist, so I'm not qualified to debate the issue. Then why are you bringing up the point if you're not qualified to address the counter-argument?
I'd like to just mention a couple of things, brought this up to address. some of the evidences that are supposed raised by people who want to say there's a global flood is the issue of sedimentary layers all over mountains and fossils in mountains all over. Plus, there's flood stories in every culture all over the world. Now, when someone says there's no evidence for it, that's a problem, because that is evidence for it. It just, whether or not someone wants to accept it. When someone says there's no evidence, that's always a problem.
You also have fossils in multiple layers of rock as well to support the flood.
Yeah, and there are supposed to be. This is here. Well, I've read this stuff. I've studied so many things, read so many things over the years, but there are supposedly trees that are fossilized through 600 million years of rock strata. And here's a question I want to ask a geologist. Because if you look, I don't know. I've just been wondering. I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I was thinking about this a while back, going, wait a minute. Let's pretend that there's a flood, and that debris, animals of all shapes and sizes, are swept down a mountain, a valley, whatever, out into a large body of water like the ocean. The Bible talks about floodgates from the bottom being opened, rain from the top. There would probably be earthquakes at the time, tectonic shifting. That's what they said probably happened there. Well, okay, but picture this churning stuff, bodies of animals and things all churning up. And then it settles, and the water settles. And I was wondering, what would happen? What would happen? What would you see if the sediment, the dirt, and the animal bodies were in there? What would you see as a segregation from bottom up? And I started thinking about it. The heavier animals, the bigger animals, would bloat, and they would stay up higher. The smaller creatures would sink down because they have less volume per mass. There's a formula for it. The larger you are, the more there's a certain ratio, and your buoyancy changes. But nevertheless, the smaller things would settle down quicker than the heavier animals, which would stay up higher, even though it's counterintuitive because they're heavier. But they bloat, and it has to do with the water and the buoyancy. And so as the sediment would fall with it, because the sediment is going to go in between things, and the animals are going to go between, you would have a gradation just as you see now, where you have the lower forms of life on lower forms of rock, and the more complex and higher levels of rock, with compression would cause a fossilization. I don't know if that's makes sense or not. I wonder if a geologist has studied that kind of a thing. I'm just curious.
Well, I know you brought up the trees, and there was, Mount St. Helens, there was some things where people were arguing that the trees were fossilized over millions of years, and yet there were some trees basically in a river after Mount St. Helens that were fossilized. So clearly it didn't take millions of years, and they were upright, or there's some issue with them being upright versus sideways or something like that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things. They found a boot. They were digging 100 feet underground. They found a boot that was styled 100 years ago from the time they were digging with a human foot bone in it. And how to get down there 100 feet below it's just weird.
Look at what it says. Scientists also thought that canyon had finished forming around 1.2 million years ago. But new research has turned both theories upside down. Geologists now think that Grand Canyon grew in a quick, violent spurts of massive flooding of the Colorado River. National Geographic for Kids, 2003, page 7. Interesting.
Misspelled your name, Melissa. Got that link. I'm going to check that out. That is awesome. Sorry, she posted a link. The oldest Quran found in Yemen, man claims. Primary tests indicate book is genuine. I'm going to check it out. You never know if that's going to be good or not.
Yeah, and what's funny, since you're debating Shadid Lewis, the basis of his argument is basically John 8:40. Jesus is an anthropos. He is a human. Yeah. Well, of course he's a human. Of course we.
Yeah, I dealt with that.
Yeah, it's absolute ridiculousness.
In our last debate, I dealt with it, and I try. And I'm going to say this. It's going to sound, the risk of being accused of lying again. Yeah. But when I was debating him, and he was using that argument, anthropos, I realized how bad of an argument it really was.
Yep.
I said, look, we're not arguing if he's a man. we're arguing if he is God. You keep bringing up that he's a man. The word anthropos it just means he's a man. You can't say anthropos doesn't mean he's God. It just means he's man, because in Christian theology, he has two natures. It's called the hypostatic union. He's both man and God, both divine and human. So we say he has two natures. So you and I agree he's anthropos. We agree that that's the case. And I said, the question is the second nature, the other nature. That's the question for the debate here. Not that he was a man, but was he divine also? And so I said, Shadid, when you continue to bring up this argument that he was a man, that's not the argument. We agree. I said, Shadid, I said, I'm not trying to be rude in any way. I think it's something like that. But you need to study the doctrine of the hypostatic union and the doctrine of the Trinity to at least understand what it is we do teach, because what you're saying doesn't match the problem and the issue under discussion here. And so I said it to him three times, I think, if I remember correctly, that he needed to study Christian theology because he doesn't understand Christian theology, and he's trying to debate against it. And that's what I said to him back then in Atlanta a few months ago.
Into their head 50 times before they will understand that we completely agree with their argument that Jesus is actually a man.
Yeah, we agree. We don't have an argument there. We agree with that. We agree he's a man. He's also divine. And then he'll say, did he act like he was God? And in one of his things he goes, did he act like he was God? Yes, he did. He walked on water.
That's a ridiculous one. For example, in John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the truth, al-haq. That's 51st name of Allah, the name that no one could take but Allah. And in Surah 22, verse 6, Allah is called the al-haq, the truth. Then in Surah 57:3, it says Allah is the first and the last.
Yes, I was going to get to that one.
Jesus, Revelation.
Yeah, I brought that up in the debate too.
Well, when you look at, did Jesus do the things God would do?
Yeah.
48% of the Gospels refer to Jesus as divine, directly or indirectly. Every time he read someone's mind, every time he controlled the weather, he said he has the authority in himself to forgive sins, the authority in himself to cast out demons. He can only have that authority if he's God. He claimed to be eternal. He claimed to have been in heaven. He claimed to know the things in the future. These are things only God could do. So
yeah, the funny thing is, Shadid likes to quote John 8:40, yet 18 verses later, Jesus says, Prim Avram genestai ego eimi, before Abraham was, I am. So it's rather funny that he tries to attack the notion that Jesus is God, yet 18 verses after the verse he quotes, there is one of the most potent statements in the entire New Testament about the divinity of Christ. So
and the way when you interpret things, context is important. When you interpret the scripture, you're going to look at the context. Look at the context in both in John 8 and John 10, especially John 10, because in John 8, after he makes his statement, they pick up stones to stone him. John 10 says, again they pick up stones to stone him, and Jesus says, for what good works do you stone me? And they say,
you a mere man claims to be God.
You being a man claim to be God. Now, we have to understand that words change over time. People use different phrases. When he said, before Abraham was, I am, they interpreted that as claiming to be God. Now one of the things
they kind of
what I'll do with them, try this with them. You go from John 8:58 to John 10:30 through 34, and you'll say, see, the Pharisees understood he was claiming to be God. And some of the sharp Muslims will say, well, no, you're getting your ideas from the Pharisees, Matt. And I go, no, I'm not, because the Pharisees denied he's God, just like you. You agree with the Jews, don't you?
Actually,
well, I read the article from Yemen, and it's just they verified that was the oldest copy of a Quran, not whether there's any textual variances.
Right.
But really, the real key on textual variances, we don't need a copy of another Quran to point out that there's textual issues. For people that don't understand, in Islam, the belief is that the Quran is absolutely perfect, unchanged, and delivered from God in Arabic, not in its translations, but in Arabic.
Right.
Therefore, if there were textual variances, that means that what they're saying is false. And as Vladimir had mentioned, and you can look in Islamic history, the third Caliph, Caliph Amr, had decreed when they first started. People don't, I think, often understand that the Quran was not written down during Muhammad's lifetime. He was illiterate. It was written down afterwards. It was translated.
There's debate about that.
Yeah.
Some say you could write.
Some say you couldn't
Matt,
write.
if you need a geologist, there's Nephilim.
But the thing that you have is you have a case where you have someone that gave his instruction. It was disseminated orally. And the idea is that it was perfectly disseminated. No one ever got anything wrong. And what you end up with is when they wrote it down, it was written down perfectly. However, if the third caliph had to put an edict to collect all the copies and then further put an edict to burn the abhorrent texts, that's enough to show there were other texts. I mean, what did he have to burn? Why would he have to declare that something had to be burned if those never existed? And so that's really the only thing you have to go to, whether, because I'm seeing some of the other comments and people are saying, well, the textual variances, you don't need a copy. Whether Yemen has this copy that has different variances, you don't need that to prove that in Islam they have an issue. Islam has an issue within their own history.
I have a question about Islam when you get a chance.
Sure, go
ahead.
All right. I listen to Walid Shubat a lot. I don't know if you have ever heard of him or his analysis of biblical prophecy being fulfilled by Islam. I want to get your take on what you think about that. Does Islam fulfill the Antichrist religion that's spoken about in the New Testament and Daniel? What is your take on that, sir? Thank you.
I would say it does, along with Catholicism and along with a lot of other religions. The type of Antichrist religion, I suspect there might be something else as a new religion getting ready to be developed worldwide. I have a theory about something, but because it talks about the great deception, and I think there's going to be a deification of man and some other things.
To tie into what Matt is saying, you need to go to 1 John 2:22-23, where it says, "Whosoever denies the Father and the Son, he is the Antichrist." While in Surah 5, verse 18, and in Surah 19, verses 88-93, Quran clearly denies in 5:18 that we are in any way the children of God, and in 19 it denies that Jesus is the Son of God. Well, what does the New Testament say? The Antichrist is the one who denies the Father and the Son, and therefore it's rather clear that Islam definitely has it is one of the Antichrist religions, definitely.
What was your question, though? I forgot your question.
The question was whether, when you look at prophecies of the 13th Imam, there are a lot of similarities to that, and in the Revelation.
Yes. That's right. That is right. It's been a while since I've gone over that.
It's close to Imam al-Mahdi, but yeah.
Right, and I want to get information on that because I went through some stuff on that. Who they're looking for is actually the Antichrist. That's who the Muslims are actually looking for. When you start listing out what they want, what they're looking for, it's like, oh my goodness, that's the Antichrist. And sheesh, yeah, I gotta find that information.
Okay, so Matt, a question that came in when we were talking about scientific inaccuracies in the Quran, or you were mentioning that a question came in and says there's scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, referring basically to miracles. So let me
address this philosophically.
Can you address the difference between something that's a scientific inaccuracy and what defines a miracle?
A scientific inaccuracy, what is science? Science is the procedure of looking at the material world and learning or seeking a way to understand it and then be able to make predictions based on what you've seen in the world. A miracle, by definition, doesn't fit into that. So people will say that a miracle is not scientific, therefore it can't be true. But what that is presupposing that the scientific method, which is a philosophy, is based on philosophical approaches, is the right way to gain knowledge, but that's an assumption. You can't use a scientific method in order to validate the scientific method without begging the question. So what they're doing is actually assuming the validity of the scientific method alone as the only legitimate way by which truth can be determined, and then subjecting miracles to that, and then denouncing miracles and say it's not scientific. Well, so what if it's not scientific? But you know what else is not scientific? And then I come home and my wife's really tired, the dishes need to be done, and she gives me the look, and I know what she's saying without saying anything. I got to wash some dishes because she's exhausted and I'm going to help her out. Well, that's scientific? No, but I know that's what the case is. Well, science is great, but it's only great at learning repeatability and predictability in the material world. That's all it is. These people who raise science up to the pinnacle of an altar and then bow down before it and say, oh, you mighty scientific method, through you is the way and the truth and the life, and we must have all knowledge by you, the great scientific method. And that's what they're doing.
You know, Matt, you hear atheists a lot say that the miracles in the Bible are a contradiction to the scientific laws.
No, it's not.
Yeah, the truth is God doesn't have to suspend or change the laws of science, contradict the laws of science. Why can't God simply use the laws of science to do what he wishes?
I just say, do you know all the laws of physics? No, God does. So he can do something that's going to look like a miracle to you. It's his, what? What's the problem? Don't tell me it's not scientific. You don't know all of science to be able to say that. I'm telling you. Okay, the people who are idolaters when it comes to the scientific method.
We have someone realistic nihilist that wants to discuss miracles with you. So
sure.
If you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question, realistic nihilist.
It's not so much a question. It's more of I would forward a proposition. The questions I had were more with regard to some things that Matt said on the YouTube channel. But if you want to discuss miracles, what I understand a miracle to be is a violation of unviolable natural laws, right? That is to say, God goes in. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so God goes in and he breaks the laws of nature, right, and does what he wills. And so that's what I understand a miracle to be.
Do you know if that's a correct definition or not?
Well, I'm not. If you want to provide a different definition, we can scrutinize that one.
Well, we know that God does things that we call them miracles, but why are they miracles? Because they're beyond our ability and scope to do and to accomplish. They're beyond what we understand. If you and I were to go back with a flashlight 2,000 years ago, it's a miracle in our hand, right?
Well, I don't think the idea is that what warrants calling something a miracle, because we know flashlights are natural phenomena. People who don't know, maybe they'll call it a miracle, but what warrants that when it's actually not a miracle?
Because their level of knowledge of physics would say that's a miraculous thing you have in your hand. Okay, fine. Let's just put it up to now. If God exists and he is one who invented the universe, every law that's embedded in it, he has privy to. If he wants to regenerate a person and have someone walk on water, what's the big deal? For him, it's not miraculous. For him, it's every day.
I don't think for anybody it would be miraculous, right? Because the definition of miracle that you forwarded could just as well be a natural phenomenon that we don't have an explanation for.
But it's at the command of God. I suspect that they're going to be...
So how would you know the difference between a miracle and some unexplained phenomena that you simply don't have an explanation?
I'm just saying, how do you know that isn't what a miracle is from a relationship of God? How do you know he doesn't have access to certain natural laws that we don't? And that that's what we perceive as a miracle. I'm just saying, how do you know that isn't the case? When you say, how would I be able to tell the difference? I don't know all the physical laws, so I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Well, I'm just calling into question what the meaning of the word miracle is, because it doesn't seem
That's
to
a good
me
question, though.
that it means anything, right? To me, it could be just as well that it's a natural phenomenon, right? And that takes all of the locution out of the claim that it's a miracle.
But laws, it's okay. The miraculous would occur here, as I mentioned earlier, when it is at the beck and call of someone like God, who has a control over those things. It'd be miraculous in his sense. For example, Jesus walked on water. We know gravity, water viscosity, displacement. We know the problems. We can do the math. It's not going to work. When God does what he does something by the power of his exertion of his will in our world. I don't know if he's accessing the 27th dimension and making a little plane of 20th dimensional whatever so Jesus can walk on it. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if he's just exerting energy and walking. I don't know. But all of these would be natural to him. So when we look about miracles, from our perspective, a miracle is something that is so unnatural to us and so improbable to us, we exclaim, that's a miracle. To God, he might be saying, no, that's not that big a deal. Look, I can do this all the time. So from whose perspective? So
What I'm saying is it's not a perspectival thing. If you're just saying,
yes, it is.
Well, then you might as well be a naturalist, right? If every miracle could be a natural phenomenon, then you might as well be a naturalist.
Except that a naturalist is also determinist in this sense, because naturalism simply says when something has the necessary preconditions to occur, it will automatically occur. There's no volition in it. The issue of the miracles has to do with volition as well. It's under the beck and call of God. It's the third time I'm mentioning this. And the issue of God being able to do what he wants, when he wants, the way he wants, for what he wants to accomplish. That's what we call it a miracle.
But then everything's a miracle, because presumably God wills existence. So then a miracle is
good for you. I would think that you're on the right track to becoming a Christian.
Right, but the claim that it's a miracle is just vacuous then.
No, not necessarily.
It just doesn't mean
I'm just postulating what I think it might be. When people say miracles can't happen, how do you know? And then first, what do we define a miracle as being? It's a tough question, because a miracle to us isn't a miracle to God. A miracle to us is something we can't do, but God can. Then if you say, well, let's expand the view of naturalism to include God, well, no, that's not what naturalism is. Naturalism is restricted to the physical realm. God is outside the physical realm, but can control the physical realm. His volition, certain events occur.
But you already said it, right? God could be using physical means that we don't understand.
Could be. I don't know if he is.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, when you come into an unexplained phenomenon, why would you call it a miracle rather than an unexplained phenomena?
Well, that's what I call it, an unexplained phenomena.
Okay. So
that's what I call it.
A miracle is supposed to be something that God intends to bring about.
Well, okay, let me give you an example of something here. Let's say my wife, this is for real, I'll type it in. She has this condition, SMADS 3. Don't ask me what it means, but it's more rare than rare, and it's a connective tissue disorder, and I can go and bore you. Okay, but she's been scientifically examined, genetics, and all this stuff. It's so rare that a hospital in Salt Lake City took her and all her brothers.
Atheists are going to say she's lying.
Yeah, she's lying, and we don't have the documents to prove it, but, anyway. So it's called SMADS 3. We used to think she had Marfan syndrome, but it's actually SMADS 3. That's what they told us. And it was so rare that when they found, get this, when they found all 5 of the siblings, she has two older brothers, 2 younger brothers, they found all 5, they said, we want to test all of you, do extensive tests, all for free. That's how rare it was. But anyway, okay. So let's just say that I'm praying for her, and I have prayed for her to be healed from this. It affects her heart, her back, her joints. She is so flexible because her joints don't really work as well as they need to. She can take handcuffs, and she was arrested once for anti-abortion stuff, and she can take her wrists and just collapse them, and the handcuffs just come off. She can lay flat on the ground with her back of her knees on the carpet and her butt on the carpet, and take her toes and just touch her toes to the ground, flat down. That's how flexible she is. Okay. What if I were to pray and say, Lord, and I prayed publicly here, heal, my wife's name is Anique, it's a French name, heal Anique of her SMADS 3. And she's sitting over there, and she starts feeling really warm all over in her body. I turn the camera on her, and we're watching her, and she's not feeling well. Okay, and then she feels different, she's warm all over her body. And then a year later, we find out for follow-up tests, she doesn't have SMADS 3 anymore. All right. Is that a miracle?
Well, on your definition, everything is a miracle. If she had SMAD 3, it would be a miracle. If she didn't have SMAD 3, it would be a miracle.
No, that's not my definition. Would that unusual thing
that God wills, right, is a miracle? And
no, I didn't say that.
Okay. Maybe I misunderstood you. You said any intentional action taken by God that God wills into existence. Right.
No, that's not what I said. But
sure.
SMADS 3 is actually a genetic thing. It's on the genetic level. That means your genes have to be, DNA had to be altered. Let's say that was done. What would you say? If something like that happened, would you say it was a miracle? Out of the ordinary, extraordinary, prayed?
I would just call it an unexplained phenomenon.
Okay. And what if you were watching when I praying in the name of Jesus and this happened?
Well, I mean, I would just call it an unexplained phenomenon unless we have a mechanism that explains it, right?
God explains it. It's a perfect explanatory mechanism.
Why wouldn't I don't think it's necessarily.
But it's a good.
Can I ask a question, realistic nihilist? Do you accept only scientific methods for examination?
I don't understand the question. Can you be more specific?
Well, you're arguing for that we have to have a scientific evidence for things. Do you accept any other type of evidence?
Well, I guess if you're being loose with the term evidence and you just mean justification for a belief, then yeah, I accept rationalist justifications for belief, yeah.
Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get to is, can you scientifically prove George Washington lived?
I think there's probably a lot of evidence that George Washington lived. Yeah.
But it wouldn't be scientific.
Yeah, it would be
historical.
Historical. Yeah, it makes certain predictions. George Washington's life makes certain predictions, and then from those predictions you make observations in the world, and if those observations come true, then that's confirmation of the hypothesis that George Washington existed. Yeah.
So you wouldn't use science to prove it. You'd use a different method called history.
No, well, history is science. Right?
It's a branch. It's a branch specifically known as history, where when you're arguing for the science of the natural world to try to prove something that's supernatural, non-material. Let me ask it this way: could you tell me how many feet 8 gallons of water weigh?
Well, I heard you have this discussion last week, and no, I don't think you can.
You can't. It's the wrong measurement. And trying to use science, the study of the natural world, to explain something that's immaterial, not natural, is the wrong measurement. Well, you need to use the right measurement if you're going to have the discussion on what you want to.
I don't really understand what the right measurement is. What is the right measurement?
God. It would
well,
be.
That's just begging the question, right? The thing that's supposed to be demonstrated is immateriality. And you can't just say, well, I'm going to use immateriality to demonstrate immateriality. That's the very thing that's supposed to be being argued for.
So
that's
God.
what you do in science.
What's that?
Sorry. You do that in science. You presuppose the validity of the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, and presuppose certain things, the intangibles. Yeah.
That's fine. But I don't see how that's relevant, right? The thing to be.
It's begging the question.
Well, I'm not begging the question. If you don't presuppose those things, that's fine. I don't think there's anything that I could do to convince you otherwise. Right?
But the presuppositions, what worldview accounts for the presuppositions? An atheist worldview doesn't. It just begs the question.
I don't understand how what an atheist worldview is. Atheism is a proposition.
It's a view of the world without God.
Right, it's just a proposition. There are several worldviews without God, right? There are several atheistic worldviews. So when you say...
just a proposition?
Yeah, atheism is a proposition.
Okay, so write out the proposition.
Well, the proposition, depending on how you want to phrase it, is either God does not exist or there is no warrant to believe in God.
Which one would you prefer? Because atheists differ.
Depends on the God claim. I think the God of classical theism is incoherent and therefore does not exist.
Well, I'm a Christian, so I'm only arguing for the Christian God.
Right.
So what's your definition of atheism now?
Well, I think on that God claim, God does not exist.
Okay. So the Christian God does not exist.
That's true.
And how do you know that?
Because it's incoherent.
How's it incoherent?
Well, through various arguments, because supposedly...
Give me one.
Okay, well, just the omnipotence paradox is an example of a simple argument.
How's that?
Well, if an omnipotent being truly exists, then he should be able to accomplish possible things, yet it's a possible thing to create an unliftable stone, yet a deity can't accomplish that, therefore the deity doesn't exist.
Oh, so you offer a self-refuting statement to refute omnipotence.
I don't understand how it's self-refuting.
Okay, you believe in logic, right? Okay, so that kind of thing is, can God make a rock so big he can't lift it up, right? That kind of argument?
Yeah.
It's a logical non sequitur.
How is it non sequitur?
What's a rock?
A rock is a spatially extended object.
How big?
I don't know, varying sizes.
Is a mountain a rock?
I mean, I suppose so. I suppose it's a...
Well, then, if it's the same thing, then what's the differentiation between a rock and a mountain? I'm going somewhere with it.
Well, if you want to be a little bit more charitable in understanding the argument, I just said an unliftable...
You understand the argument. I'm trying to show you that your argument doesn't make any sense, that your incoherence problem is itself incoherent.
If
you can say a rock you can't believe, what's a rock? A rock is a smaller segment of a larger body. If you make a rock so big you can't pick it up, then it would have to be bigger than the universe, which wouldn't be a rock anymore.
May I please explain the objection? Okay?
I thought you did.
No, I didn't. You took it and you went like out in outer space with it, and you didn't represent my argument, right?
Okay, what's your argument?
When we want to call something liftable, let's just call it liftable with respect to the Earth. So that means a finite mass of stone that's on the Earth that cannot be moved with respect to the Earth, right? This is, of course, logically possible because you don't derive a contradiction simply from the premises. And so it's a logically possible action that God ought to be able to do if he is, in fact, omnipotent.
Can God make a round square?
No, that's logically incoherent.
Oh, so, but it's logically consistent to limit this challenge just to Earth.
Well, I don't. What's incoherent about that? Where's the contradiction? I can demonstrate the contradiction in a square.
Are there planets out there bigger than Earth?
What's that?
Because God expands the universe. He's bigger than the universe. I mean, he's going to make a rock so big he can't lift it up. The rock is material. The universe is smaller in size than him because by scope. So how is that not a circle square problem?
Well, presumably Jesus existed as fully God, right? Maybe God could make a man-sized being inside material universe that he couldn't lift.
If God created the universe, then he's bigger than it. He extends beyond it. He's not limited to it. A rock, by definition, is materialistic, and so therefore it's a non sequitur to say of rock he can't lift up because it just doesn't make any sense. It's a round square problem.
Well, does Jesus have the ability to walk on water? You guys were using that.
Yes, earlier. He does, and that was recorded by the eyewitnesses.
By your conditions, that's a non sequitur because he doesn't. He's immaterial being, therefore he can't walk on water, right?
What? Wait. Look, I just tore your argument apart. You jumped ship, and you went to Jesus walking on water.
No, I was just explaining to you analogically the type of reasoning
you weren't.
you're using.
You were not.
Yeah, I was. It was just explaining. I was just drawing an analogy to say,
you said omnipotence.
Then it shouldn't be a problem in this case as well.
You said omnipotence. You're saying why God can't be because of the omnipotent problem. I just showed you that your example doesn't work. That you go to Jesus walking on water. Stick with the omnipotence thing.
You didn't create a problem for the omnipotence paradox. You just declared by fiat that that's an impossible action because you said so. But there's no contradiction.
Wait a minute.
Derive a contradiction.
Yeah.
For a minute. Let me just explain it. Right. You can't derive a contradiction from a being lifting a stone. That's it, right? That's the contradiction. There's no contradiction in that statement. Can a being not lift a stone? Presumably, I cannot lift certain stones, right? Certain stones are beyond my scope of lifting, right? So that's it's logically possible that I can't lift a certain size of rock or a certain, type of rock. So the question is whether or not God can create such a rock.
Okay.
And that's just one argument, right? There are several others.
That's what the atheists are coming up with. A rock, a large mass of stone forming a hill, cliff, promontory, or the like, geology, mineral matter of variable composition, consolidated or unconsolidated, stone in the mass, a stone of any size.
It doesn't have to, it's not really relevant whether it's a rock or if it's a fucking toad. Can God create a toad that he can't lift?
Okay, let me look up
Please
the
watch
word
your language, all right? If you're going to stay on, because I will boot for that.
Yeah.
All right, I apologize.
Toad, any of various tailless amphibians. Okay, let's stick with the toad.
Sure.
Okay, all right. So, do you know of any tailless amphibians that are larger than the universe? Just curious.
I don't understand the premise that it has to be larger than the universe. It can.
The Christian God created the universe.
Sure.
The universe has rocks in it, toads in it.
Fine.
To make a toad bigger than the universe, so he can't lift it up.
I don't understand the premise. You're sneaking in a premise.
May I jump in for a second?
I just about had him.
I'm sorry. Keep going. I apologize.
Okay. You see, the thing is, I mean, this whole thing is absurd. Lift. So God doesn't have spatiality, and he's supposed to exist in space, which is limited to the universe, which he's outside of, to lift something in relationship to what? Because lifting is in relationship to himself. But yet, he's everywhere. So how does he lift anything that's bigger than himself or they can't weigh when he's not located in one place?
Well, presumably Jesus was spatially extended, right?
Okay. Yeah, okay. I just, showed. What were you going to say?
Doug, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just that this argument was going in circles for quite some time. I was going to ask that we move on to another question because I mean it's an obvious thing to point out the fact that the Christian God is immaterial and outside of the universe that he himself created. Any object inside the universe that he himself created is not greater than God, so to speak, to where he cannot lift it. But
let's do this.
To move on to another question, about atheism or Islam, at like the title of the.
What we're going to do.
Thank you very much.
We had a lot of good discussion on Islam. We got some discussion on atheism. I'm going to close out, but I want to. I want to ask, so Matt, I think we may have addressed this in the beginning, but in case we didn't, if it came down to Islam versus atheism, those two worldviews battling it out in a political arena, because that's really, they're both political, who wins?
Oh, the one who shoots first.
So, for the folks, and John, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself so you can sign us off. But we're gonna go off air. For those who are watching, you're still gonna be able to join in. The hangout continues afterwards. We usually get a lot of good discussions. There's some folks that only like to be in the after part and get discussion. But Matt and I are going to hang out for a little while. And what are you yelling at, Matt?
Oh, sorry. I just checked. I don't know why I did. Hey, look, Carm Videos is up on my thing, a tab, and there it is. I clicked on it, and the video of the Mormon conversation I had in Manti in June, it just got put up. And it's a great video because the guy gave me complete permission to use the whole thing. I wasn't perfect in it, but it's good. We'll see what happens. 149 views just got put up. Okay, sorry.
So we're talking about Matt being really distracted.
Squirrel. Wait a minute, he asked me. Sorry.
So folks, we appreciate all the folks that came in. We even appreciate those of you on YouTube that don't have the courage to get in and actually challenge Matt. You only challenge with words behind your computer. But we appreciate you watching. We're going to continue the hangout, just going off the air. And so encourage you to tune in to Bible Thumping Wingnut, the podcast. This hangout will go on, I think, Monday mornings is when this is released, and then there will be a Bible Thumping Wingnut podcast that is released on Wednesdays. Encourage you guys to be checking those out, downloading those onto your whatever podcaster you may have to get more of that content, learning things, listening more of debates with Matt Slick. And I will let John sign us out before I kill the program.
Okay. Be encouraged, strengthen, unafraid, and proclaim the gospel and go serve your king. Go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com for more information about Bible Thumping Wingnut Hangouts. Thank you and God bless.